Kerala Shivan, the principal of Kasturba College for Women in Pondicherry, and on behalf of both the organizing colleges, I welcome each one of you to the international webinar on Young Minds Matter. COVID-19 has changed the way we live our lives. A new normal has come into being, and many of us are finding it very difficult to adjust. While we can overcome economic hardships, dealing with psychological setbacks is a totally different ballgame. When our youth reached out to us for assistance, we realized that it was a very appropriate time to help them resolve such issues. At the outset, a special word of gratitude to our director, Thiruvayalan Reddy, for his constant encouragement of our endeavors. Thank you very much, sir. I would also like to thank Dr. Rani, principal of the Women's Polytechnic College, and her colleagues, Dr. Gandhi Mohan and Mr. Padmaraj, and Dr. Bhuvaneshwari of Kasturba College for assisting in organizing this webinar. We are happy to have 782 of you registering from all 4 corners of India and also from the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan. We have 4 resource persons with us, and each one of them will be introduced by Dr. Bhuvaneshwari before the start of their individual sessions. However, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Thiru A. Anbarasu, IAS, the Development Commissioner, cum Secretary Education, Government of Puducherry, who has kindly consented to deliver the keynote address. Thiru A. Anbarasu belongs to the 1996 batch of the Indian Administrative Service. His current assignments in Puducherry are as Development Commissioner and Secretary, Agriculture, Education, Port, Personnel, and Animal Husbandry. His most significant assignment was as collector of the Nicobar district in the aftermath of the 2004 tsunami, where his relief and rehabilitation efforts won him the Honorable Lieutenant Governor's Commendation for Tsunami Relief Work. Thiru A. Anbarasu is a very hands-on senior official. This is evidenced in his involvement with his college's staff and students. His constant monitoring of the institutions and his encouragement to their development has fostered a very positive change in the educational scenario in the Union Territory of Puducherry. Always proactive and encouraging, there is no better person to introduce the essence of this webinar than him. May I request, sir, to kindly address the participants.
Thank you, Madam Cheryl. I deem it a privilege to be with all of you today through online because these are unprecedented situations. These are all not novel times. But of course, every crisis is an opportunity. Had there not been COVID-19 crisis, probably many of us would not have turned to technology to find solutions. So in a sense that this occasion, this COVID pandemic has helped us to turn our attention more towards technology as to how we can reach the unreached. I am told that experts and participants from across the globe are here today. It augurs well for the world. In your introductory remarks, you have mentioned about my work in Andaman and Nicobar Islands in the aftermath of tsunami. Tsunami has taught the entire world community a big lesson that what happens in one country has wider impact in other countries also. A small quake or a big earthquake which had struck in the Sunda Strait of Indonesia had impacted the globe so much that even there were deaths reported in the coast of Northern Africa. So such was the extent of natural calamity. Today also, this COVID-19 SARS-CoV-2 virus has engulfed the entire world. It has not spared rich and poor. It did not distinguish developed and underdeveloped. I think the entire community has been affected because of this virus. There has never been an occasion more than this to drive down the message of being together, thinking together, planning together, achieving together, and moving together. So one biggest takeaway of this COVID-19 pandemic is that the entire community should stand in unison and plan together for the welfare of the world. This is an unprecedented situation for everyone, be it a man walking in the road, be it a policymaker, be it a teacher, be it a student, it is a kind of a grave crisis. So this grave crisis comes with a grave crisis. This grave crisis comes with a big opportunity also. I think that is how we should take it and move forward. My dear participants, as we speak today, the world has crossed 1 lakh COVID positive patients. Of course, more than 50% of them have already got cured and moved to their respective residences. So far, we have lost more than 5 lakh lives. More than 500,000 lives have been lost. In India alone, we have touched the figures of 5.5 lakh. In the month of June alone, there has been more than 3.5 lakh cases reported from across the country. Lockdown measures have started long back, be it China, be it Western countries like Italy, France, US, and developing countries like India. In varying degrees since January, the world is under lockdown. The world is under physical lockdown. The world is equally under mental lockdown. Of course, several unlocking measures have been taken up so as to put back the economy back on the rails. But the kind of mental health issues that have cropped up in the last couple of months is a very, very big issue. Especially in developing countries where the systems are in the process of attaining certain levels of comfort and maturity, the problems are bound to happen a lot. If you take the case of India alone, a 2016 World Health Organization study has revealed that the suicide rates in India as compared to the global levels is almost higher by 50%. When the world had 10.6 deaths, India has reported 16.5, which is almost 50% more than the national average. Considering the current problems of the lockdown, the mental health issues are likely to rise in alarming proportion. Few weeks back, we had an interaction with the college students of Puducherry, in which one girl stood up and said, sir, the minister was also there with us. She in a kind of a crying voice had said that it is becoming increasingly difficult for her to cope up with mental issues and social issues that are cropping up. Of course, the entire world is geared up today and fighting against COVID because the COVID never distinguishes between rich and poor, never distinguishes who possesses things, who does not possess. It affects everybody cutting across. You would be shocked to know that on account of poverty and malnutrition alone, thousands of children die in developing countries like India every day. The TB, which consumes the lives of nearly 4.5 lakh citizens in India alone, which works out to 37,500 deaths per month. So these are some of the startling numbers which are thrown up before us. If somebody dies on account of TB, it doesn't affect us because only those who are affected by TB undergo this rigor of medical and related protocols. For many of us in the government sector or in the private sector, only few of them get affected on account of malnutrition and poverty. Poverty doesn't touch the lives of many of us today. So the reason for COVID-19 gaining alarming proportions across the globe is that it affects everyone, it affects the mental health of everyone. This is the time the teaching community and student community should come more closer. Of course, there is physical distancing, there are no colleges and schools. That doesn't mean that this COVID-19 can separate students and faculty from being more closer. I will just read some of the quotes which talk about the relation between students and teachers. An anonymous quote says, without teachers, life would have no class. If you need to have a classy life, you need to have teachers. Teachers affect eternity. No one can tell when their influence stops because the influence of teachers can continue to be there till we have our last breath. 9/10 of education is encouragement. The kind of encouragement given to students is 9/10 of the education. You tell me, I'll forget. You show me, I may remember. You involve me, I will understand. So this is the time for us to involve with the student community more than ever. Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. This is the famous quote of Arthur Ashe, famous tennisman. This is the time for all of us, especially at the level of policy making like me and the director and all the officials in the higher education department and the teaching community, to do what you can to the student community. He who opens a school door closes a prison. Prison need not be a kind of a prison in the physical sense, the prison of the mind also. So we have to unlock the potentials of the students. We have to engage with the students. We have to talk with the students. Friends, many countries have got mental health acts in place. So this is the time for policymakers to unleash the provisions of the Mental Health Act and try to reach out to the teachers and students in a big way. So the health department of each state and provincial governments have a bigger role to play in the days to come. Of course, there are many success stories that mobile health vans at the time of crisis have been set among the community. The Tamil Nadu experience of having mobile vans have had a telling effect, in which the studies have revealed that depression of student and community have dropped by 22%, and the thought of suicide has come down by alarming 51%. These are all good signs. Mental health institutions, they are starting telepsychiatry classes. This is an apt time for such institutions and medical institutions to come out with telemedicine and telepsychiatric counseling issues, so that students who are in need will be able to access them to the maximum. Let me quote the UNICEF, which has highlighted the importance of mental health in today's context. The stakes on mental health could not be higher. If not adequately or appropriately addressed, the mental health consequences for a generation of children and young people could far surpass the immediate health and economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, leaving long-term social and economic consequences in its wake. Friends, we have all seen in our own eyes what pandemic 19 has caused in terms of migration of workers from one region to the other region. There is loss of job, there is loss of livelihood, there is a section of people and community who do not know what to do for their next meal. In government setup, we are catering to the needs of such lower state of the society. Predominantly, the students who are coming to our institutions are from the lower middle and lower state of the society. So this is the time for us to think little louder. The mentorship program which we have launched in our schools and colleges, I think we have to reach out to all the students as far as possible through the mobile phones and other kind of means. I have seen a lot of stories in which many faculty members of the colleges have gone to the students, have gone to the houses of students, sat with them, interacted with them, tried to understand the mental health issues of the students and the family members. My dear faculty members, let us plan together, let us reach out together. This is the time for us to be active more than ever. Of course, we may feel that we are being bound by the restrictions at home, but that doesn't mean that our contacts with the students are being put in the cold storage. So let us use the limited technological means available before us and try to reach out to the students. From the government point of view also, we are also aware of the big challenges. As we speak today, the opening of the colleges, there is a big question mark. Though the UGC has mentioned that in the month of September, the first year colleges would start. I doubt, considering the severity of the COVID-19 pandemic, we'll be able to open the colleges for the first year students in the month of September. There could be a delay of few more months. There is even possibility of missing the entire semester so as to make students to come to our colleges. So we have to find the ways of reaching out to the students. One issue is having a separate channel of education, which the higher education department is working now. We are also planning to come out with community radio system through which we can impart classes and reach out to the students. We are also discussing as to how we can create a kind of a reading centers in rural areas where we'll put large screens of LCD TVs and air classes to students, both in terms of the academic curriculum and mental health. We are also in the process of establishing computer centers through government money, wherein students can sit before the computers and access to education. So all these models of education are being discussed, and also we are discussing with health department as to how we can reach out to the students and their family members who are in need of mental health. So we need your support. This is a kind of a colossal epidemic which none of us had envisioned. It all struck us in a matter of weeks, and finding an answer to this is very, very difficult. As we speak now, people say, even the World Health Organization say that it will take at least a year to come out with a kind of a vaccine to fight COVID-19. All permutations and combinations are being attempted now, because we are fighting an enemy whose full figure is not known to anybody. So we are fighting with an enemy about whom we know very little. So in such a scenario, out of the box solutions coming out of our comfort zone, because unless and until policymakers and professionals and teachers come out of our comfort zone, we cannot keep the society at its comfort. So let us take this crisis as an opportunity. When a glass is filled with half glass of water, an optimist can always say half glass full. A pessimist will say half glass is empty. So let us say that today the glass is not only half filled water, the glass is also filled half with air. So such kind of an optimism we should throw in front of the community, try to reach out and try to speak out and try to show the right path to the students, so that the poor and vulnerable sections of the society in the days to come will look upon the faculty members, will look upon the experts, will look upon the policymakers like us as a kind of a ray of hope and beacon of light, because they need our support more than ever before. So I hope the policymakers will have good round of discussion today. The faculty members also will contribute their wisdom and knowledge which they gained over a period of time. And at the end of the day, if some good actionable points emerge, as a policymaker, as secretary to the Government of Education, I am more than willing to look into those recommendations and try to implement in Puducherry and recommend those points to the Government of India, so that things can be implemented at the federal level also, in addition to the local level. I thank the organizers, particularly the Women Polytechnic Puducherry and Department of Psychology, Kasturba College Women Puducherry, for giving me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts at a very important juncture of our civilization. Thank you very much, and best wishes to each one of you present here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your very, very pertinent observations. As our secretary has just mentioned, a student called Charumadi of the first year BA Economics class in the government in Bharadasan College reached out to us for psychological counseling. She is with us at the moment, and she would like to say a few words to everyone here.
Good morning. My name is Good morning. My name is Charumati. I'm pursuing graduation. Pursuing graduation on economics in Bharadasan Government College for Women. Since I'm in first year of my graduation, I'm in 18. I think this is the age where all should get either happiness or depression without any reason. In this lockdown, me and my friends have also experienced both happiness and depression. Even we got confused about our future. I felt that if I get psychological guidance, it will be more helpful to us. So I requested in the last meeting, which was organized by the Education Department. I was excited when I saw this webinar invitation. So I want to thank Education Minister of Puducherry, Education Secretary, and Directorate of Higher and Technical Education. Because of their effort only, I'm attending this session. Thank you so much for this wonderful session, sir. I have read the topic of this webinar session. I think this will be very, very helpful to all are participating here. Although the message has passed to every student, but in student side, there are less participants only. I wish them to participate. We have to motivate them in any way. Thank you for giving the opportunity. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Charumati. And now we'll move over to Dr. Bhuvaneshwari to introduce the first resource person for the morning session.
Thank you, ma'am. A warm good morning to everyone. I'm very happy to introduce Ms. Shasha. Madam has a background in psychology and is currently a member of British Psychological Society. She has a great interest in supporting and raising awareness among young people's mental health. Ms. Shasha has worked in different educational settings in supporting students' well-being. Ma'am is going to offer us insights into young people's mental health and will help in understanding triggers, starting the conversation with youth and tackling the stigma. I now request ma'am to take over the session. Please, ma'am.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. I am going to attempt to share my screen with you, so just bear with me 1 second. So I can get my presentation up and ready. Okay, so I hope you can all see this. So I'm here today to basically raise awareness and improve your understanding of young people's well-being from a mental health perspective. So as mentioned, my name is Sasha Ruth Bippin. I have a background in psychology, having studied it at both an undergraduate and postgraduate level. I'm also currently a member of the British Psychological Society. Following my studies, I've worked in many universities, in college and schools even, delivering workshops to young people who are struggling with their mental health. I've also been part of youth-led projects to advocate change for youth mental health in our local system. And this was also taken up at a national level and presented at the House of Commons in London. So I have a little photo of me in the corner of the screen there, if you can see, of me doing just that. So in today's session, I hope to achieve a few things with you. So I hope to increase your understanding of what it is that we mean by mental health. I hope to be able to tackle kind of the myths that surround mental health, because there's still many out there and that contributes to a lot of stigma. I hope to increase your understanding of potential risk factors and the signs of mental ill health, so that you as educators can have a look out and spot anyone who you may think is struggling with a mental health issue or could potentially be at risk of a mental health issue. And also give you some guidance as to what educators can do to support students who are struggling with mental health. So let's start off by talking about mental health. So this is a word that gets thrown around so much, but what do we actually mean by mental health? So mental health inevitably kind of underpins the way that we think, the way that we feel, and the way that we act. So it's about having a good sense of psychological, emotional, and social well-being in a way that enables us to fruitfully contribute to society, in a way that enables us to productively engage with and complete activities. It allows us to form meaningful relationships, and it also enables us to be able to cope and overcome any stresses that we may encounter in life. Now, it's really important to distinguish between mental health and mental health issues or mental health disorders. So it has been reported that up to 1 in 4 people can experience mental health issues. However, it's so important to note that all of us, so that's 4 in 4 people, have mental health. Okay, so mental health, if someone is out there saying, you know, mental health is a topic that's not applicable to me, or, you know, it's not something that I need to be aware of, it's absolutely wrong. It's something that everyone needs to be aware of, because it's something that everybody has. So let's move on to mental health disorders now. So the World Health Organization defines mental health disorders as a broad range of problems with different symptoms that are generally characterized by abnormal thoughts. So these thoughts may be quite distorted from reality. They may be quite repetitive and compulsive. Also emotions. So emotions may be like persistent feelings of either sadness or anxiety, or emotions may be kind of up and down a lot. Behavior and relationships with others. So if someone is struggling with their mental health, and if they start withdrawing themselves, and if they start isolating themselves from society, then the relationships with others will start to break down and fail as a result of this. So it's as important to look after our mental health as it is our physical health. Mental health issues do not discriminate by age, gender, sex, religion, race, none of that. So it's really, really, really important that we do look after our mental health, and there would not be good physical health without mental health. So why is it important for us to focus on mental health in young people? So the World Health Organization, again, has stated that up to 50% of mental health issues develop before the age of 14 and 75% before the age of 25. And now if you're wondering why is it that younger people are more vulnerable at that stage in life, or why are we more vulnerable in that stage of life to developing mental health issues? Well, younger people experience so much change in their lives. So they're changing physically, so their bodies are growing and developing. There are lots of changes socially, so it may be transitions from school to college, college to university, maybe even gaining more of a sense of self and who they are and how they fit into society. But also maybe changes socially in like peer relationships, changing friendship groups. So there is a lot of change that goes on in a young person's life. And this can all make it more vulnerable for a young person to be susceptible to mental health issues. It has also been noted that 10 to 20% of children and young people experience mental health issues worldwide, which is a significant, significant statistic. Suicide is the third leading cause of death in 15 to 19-year-olds, and I believe the second cause of death in 15 to 29-year-olds, which is just so tragic, because with the right support and with early intervention, this is something that most definitely can be prevented. And it's also important to focus on the mental health of children and young people, because a lack of support in the early stages of life can lead to greater issues in adulthood. So despite there being so much, despite mental health issues being so prevalent and such a big issue, there is still so much stigma that surrounds the issue. And there's a lot of myths also. So let's take a look at some of these myths and let's try and break it down. The first one, people develop mental disorders due to weaknesses in their personality or character. This is so absolutely not true. So mental disorders are not caused because people are lazy or because people are weak. Absolutely not. In fact, some of the students that I've worked with and some of the students that I've supported, I would say are some of the most driven, most passionate, most studious people that I've ever met in my life. So absolutely not. It is not due to any weakness in personality or character. Violence and unpredictability are behaviors often exhibited by those with mental health issues. False. So false. Because people who struggle with their mental health are often victims of a lot of violence and aggression because of the stigma and discrimination that surrounds it. Ups and downs are a part of puberty. It's nothing to be concerned about. To that I say, ups and downs may well be a part of puberty. But if the young person does not have a good social support, if they do not have appropriate coping mechanisms, they may never recover from those downs. So it's really important that even if you feel maybe just a little bit of a down moment, it's really important that you support that young person. I'm not a medic or a psychologist. I can't do anything to support someone with a mental health problem. Absolutely not true. Again, even, there is always something that someone can do. even if it's just asking them something as simple as, how are you? Or even if you feel you might not know exactly what to say or how to say something, just offer to sit and listen to them. And that can do someone a whole world of good. Another one should keep a safe distance from someone who is depressed. So this quote I took from a report by the Live, Laugh, Love Foundation, I believe. Live, Love, Laugh Foundation. Is only making the situation worse for that person. It's only isolating them more. It's only going to contribute to them withdrawing more because they're going to feel like there's something like seriously very, very wrong with them. And depression is not something that you can catch. By being around with someone, by talking to someone, by interacting with someone who is depressed, does not mean that you are also at risk then suddenly of depression. No, absolutely not. So don't keep yourself distanced from someone. Keep interacting with them. Keep including them. Keep involving them. And people with mental health illnesses are not able to study or work. Again, this is very false. And I hope to show you why. So I have on screen an image of Sir Isaac Newton. And if I asked you, Sir Isaac Newton, what do you know about him? You'd say, oh, well, Sir Isaac Newton discovered gravity, or you may even know that, he was the first scientist to be knighted by the Queen. Charles Dickens, very, very well-known English writer. Some even say the greatest novelist of the Victorian era. Bollywood actress, Deepika, one of the highest paid actresses in India. J.K. Rowling, writer of the Harry Potter series and the first person to make $1 billion from her writing. John F. Nash Jr., Nobel Prize winning mathematician, and David Beckham, professional footballer, president and co-owner of many, many football clubs. So these people are all incredibly, incredibly successful people, and so incredibly successful in the avenues in which they have pursued. But what would you say if I said that all of these people at some point in their lives have struggled with their own mental health? So Sir Isaac Newton was believed to struggle with bipolar disorder. Charles Dickens reportedly struggled with depression, as did Deepika and J.K. Rowling. John F. Nash Jr. struggled with schizophrenia. And actually, there's a really nice film based on the experiences of John F. Nash Jr. and his battles with schizophrenia. And it's called A Beautiful Mind. So have a look out for that if you're able to. And David Beckham, professional footballer, has openly spoken about his struggles with obsessive compulsive disorder, otherwise known as OCD. So I hope this shows to you that people, even though they may have their own struggles and they may have their own mental health issues, they are still able to be highly successful in whichever field they pursue. And this list is by no means completely exhaustive. The list just goes on and on and on. And as you can see from this, mental health issues do not discriminate by gender, don't discriminate by race, don't discriminate by age, nothing. So let's now move on to some of the risk factors. So I've tried to include ones that you are more likely to see. This is by no means a very complete list. It's just something that you might be able to look out for more as educators. So the first one is abuse, trauma, or neglect. So if a young person is subject to any type of abuse, whether that be physical, sexual, neglect, financial, anything, they are at more risk of developing mental health issues. Bullying can be a big one because bullying can make someone feel like they are very kind of different or make them even start to be kind of a little bit more isolated within the world. Loss of a loved one is interesting because loss of a loved one, it's natural and it's normal to feel upset and it's normal to feel down. But like I said before, it's about having those good coping mechanisms in place to be able to get you through those times so that you are able to move on in time with life. Academic stress and pressure is a huge one that I've come across when supporting students. Some students feel like they just have so much on their plate and they have so much on their workload that they're just unable to cope with it. Or some students even set incredibly high standards for themselves. And when they try to achieve those standards and they aren't able to, they feel a sense of failure. They feel like they aren't able to achieve anything. They start developing kind of a low self-esteem. So this can be a really big risk factor for many students. Financial pressure. So a lot of students who may come from more deprived areas may be at more risk of developing mental health issues. But also I've come across, young people who have had pressure from families to pursue employment as opposed to education because family needs money. So again, this can be like a huge risk factor. Any life changes. So this can range from transitioning, as I said before, from school to college to university, whichever. It can be life change in, for example, parental divorce. It can be changes in friendship groups, peer groups, but any major life change that really impacts on the person can be a risk factor if they do not have those good coping mechanisms. Physical health issues. So I put physical health issues on here, not to say that everyone who has a physical health issue will develop mental health issue. Absolutely not. I put this on here because some people who are struggling with their physical health and feel like because of their physical health, they are not able to live life as they perhaps want to, and they feel very restricted. That could potentially lead to the development of a mental health issue, because if you feel you are unable to live the life that you are wanting to, it can start making you feel really low and quite potentially depressed in some instances. Parental mental health issues. So if a young person is living with a parent or a carer who is struggling with their own mental health issues, how severe is the mental health issue that the parent or carer is struggling with? Is the young person picking up work that ordinarily would be done by a parent or carer? Would the young person then become a young carer for their parent? And and if the person is a young carer and they're picking up all these additional responsibilities, it is going to impact on them, and it's going to impact on their mental well-being, because they aren't able to do things that ordinarily young people would be able to do. And also I put here questions around gender identity and or sexual orientation. So again, similar with physical health issues, this is not to say that anyone who is questioning or identifies or has transitioned that they certainly will develop mental health issues. Absolutely not. So I've put this on here because people who either openly identify as transgender or being gay or whatever it might be they identify as, they face a lot of discrimination in society still today. And because of this, it can really put them in a more vulnerable position to being able to develop mental health issues. And certainly when we're thinking about gender, so I have quite a lot of experience in working with young people who are struggling with eating disorders in particular. And when thinking about eating disorders and young females, for example, and they feel they don't truly identify with the body in which they were born with, or the gender identity in which they were born with, and and their bodies are starting to develop and grow and take form, and they're feeling very, very, very uncomfortable, and then they may start doing things to be able to kind of slow that process down, and that can lead to the development of mental health issues. So what impact has COVID-19 had? Well, looking at some of these risk factors, we've all been in quarantine for a very long time, and that is going to increase the risk of isolation. It potentially is also going to increase academic stress and pressure, because young people are now so far removed from their education system. So, everything's done virtually now. They're no longer in close proximity with teachers or lecturers or whoever it might be. Are they having opportunities to ask questions about work? Are they getting more work than they usually would? Are they able to understand fully the work that they've been given? So it could lead to an increase in academic stress and pressure. Abuse, trauma, and neglect, again, can increase. So if a young person is living in a household with someone who is abusing them, I can't even imagine what would be happening right now for those who are being quarantined with their abuser. It just must be absolutely awful. And then financial pressure. As was mentioned previously, a lot of people are losing their jobs. A lot of people have lost their jobs. A lot of people, even though they may not have fully lost their jobs, are having pay cuts. And this can all impact on someone's well-being. So this can all lead to an increase in a minute. So I'm going to briefly talk you through the different types of mental health problems. I'm not going to go into detail on each and every one of these, because I know that some of the speakers and presenters after me will be talking about some of these in more detail, but I'll just give you a very, very brief overview of some of the most common ones or most heard of ones that you might come across. So depression. Depression is when someone feels a prolonged sense of sadness. And, it's normal to feel low and it's normal to feel sad, but it's about it being prolonged. So it happens, that sense of sadness is there for a couple of weeks, for a couple of months, in some instances, years. Anxiety. Anxiety is when someone faces a constant sense of worry, which can be quite life-limiting, really. It can really hold someone back. Eating disorders, self-harms, and addictions. So these three are just some examples of unhealthy mechanisms that I spoke about before, unhealthy coping mechanisms that I spoke about before. So an eating disorder, when someone thinks of an eating disorder, they immediately think, oh, people are doing it because they want to look a certain way. It's all about vanity, when it really is not. At the very core of eating disorders, it's about people trying to cope. They're trying to cope with stressful situations that they are coming across in life. And there are so many different types of eating disorders as well. I think people initially think of anorexia nervosa when they think of eating disorders, but there are so many. There's bulimia, there is binge eating disorder, there's what is now termed as OSFED. So there's so many different types of eating disorders. Self-harm. Self-harm, again, I think when people think about self-harm, so self-harm is basically when a person intentionally harms or injures themselves. And when people think of self-harm, they think of people cutting themselves, which is there, but it's by no means the only form of self-harm. I've known students to do all sorts of other things to be able to harm their bodies, for example, burning, punching, all that kind of stuff. Addictions. I put addictions on there just as a broad category, because there can be so many different types. There's addictions to drugs, alcohol, gambling, maybe even like tobacco to a degree. So addictions can take many forms and is another example of an unhealthy coping mechanism. Post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, is frequently something that is associated with people in the army. But anyone can experience post-traumatic stress disorder if they have experienced an extremely traumatic event for them. And this can be from something like an episode of abuse to something like a car accident. So whatever is really traumatic for that person. And what happens is that they have either night terrors or flashbacks to these traumatic events. And that can be quite distressing for the person to keep reliving that. Schizophrenia. So schizophrenia is when someone it's a type of psychosis, and it's when someone might have hallucinations and delusions, and they can sometimes find it a little bit difficult to distinguish between their hallucinations and delusions and reality. Bipolar disorder is when someone's moods are kind of up and down. So they have very, very high highs in their mood and very low lows. So it ranges from a point of mania, which is really high, to right down to depression. And this is not something that is changing every single day. This is not happening overnight. The episode of mania may last a couple of weeks, and then they may fall into an episode of depression for, however long, and then constantly kind of up and down. And obsessive compulsive disorder. So obsessive compulsive disorder, otherwise known as OCD, is when someone has quite obsessive thoughts or compulsive behaviors. So for example, a person might need to keep checking that the door is locked, and they'll check it again and again and again. And even though there's something in them telling them that they don't want to, there's this voice in their mind that keeps saying, but is it really locked? But are you sure it's locked? But do you want to make sure it's locked? And it will not kind of let up until the person keeps doing that behavior, that compulsive behavior of checking again and again. So when people think of obsessive compulsive disorder, they frequently think of hand washing is the first thing that comes into mind. And there is, hand washing is a type of OCD, but there is a very, very small population of people who struggle with OCD that do wash their hands obsessively. It's mostly other things, like some people have issues with numbers. Some people don't like odd numbers, for example. So this was just a brief kind of run through of different mental health problems that can exist. So how can you pick up on, what might be the signs of someone or a young person struggling with mental health issue? So if they're in the classroom, you might notice that they have an inability to concentrate. They may develop a low sense of self-esteem, and potentially they may be a little bit more irritable and have anger issues. But this by no means mean that they will be aggressive or violent just because they're a bit angry. Absenteeism. So if a young person, you notice their attendance starting to decline, if they are going missing from school or college or university, that would be something that should be a red flag for you. A decline in academic performance. Decline in academic performance, it can be a normal thing, because we're only human. We can't be great in every single subject. But it's when you notice kind of a drastic decline in their performance, when you notice something that is out of the norm for that person, then it would be something to think about and start wondering whether there is something else going on. If you notice new wounds or scars on the person even may start to be a little bit more disruptive in class. So maybe that's kind of their way of saying, something's not okay, or even trying to distract their own mind from thinking about certain things. They may have quite low mood. They may start to isolate and withdraw themselves from their friends, from their peers. And you may see them kind of gaining or losing weight. Now, this is not to say that, if someone gains or loses weight, that automatically, maybe mental health issue. No. It's a combination of these signs together that should make you think that, okay, there may be something else going on here. So now let's talk about recovery from a mental health issue, because recovery from a mental health issue is absolutely possible. Absolutely. There is no universal definition of what recovery is. And in fact, from my experience of working with students, I've sat down and I've asked people, you know, what does recovery mean to you? And it varies from person to person. So for some people, recovery means never having a single thought about anything related to that mental health issue or obsessive thoughts or anything like that remotely ever again. And for some people, it means still having that, but being able to cope with it, being able to manage it in a way that allows you to successfully move on and study and work and have families. And recovery is by no means a linear line. So I've drawn this graph on the slide, as you can see, that shows a range of ups and downs, and that is exactly what recovery is. It is a series of ups and downs and backs and forth. And some people may even feel that they've had a major setback and they've gone back right to the very beginning. But they are never truly right at the very beginning, because along that recovery journey, they are learning, you know, what triggers those certain emotions and feelings and how they can cope with that in the future. So they're constantly learning and they're constantly developing, and generally there will be an upwards trend. In recovery, it's most important that people take small steps to reach their bigger goals. So for example, if you have a young person who has not been coming into university or college or school for the last 2 weeks, and you sit down with them and you say, okay, from next week, I want you in every single day. That's not going to happen. That's not going to work. It's about taking smaller steps. So saying, okay, you know, I appreciate that it was difficult to come in before. So let's just try Monday. See how Monday goes. If Monday sounds a little bit too daunting, let's just try Monday morning. See how Monday morning goes. And then if you're able to cope, if you feel like you're okay and you're managing, let's just see if you can try and stay on the afternoon as well. So it's about taking those smaller steps to be able to reach their bigger goals. It's so important that people stay positive in recovery, because it's very, very easy for people to start beating themselves up and thinking, oh, you know, I'm not doing it right, or I'm all the way back to the beginning if they have a setback. But it's important to recognize that, you know, this is all a natural and normal part of recovery, and to keep moving forwards. It's also important to have hope. And, you know, having hope is I feel like a major part of it, and it's a major chunk. And if you have hope, you can achieve what it is that you want to. So how can you help as educators? You can help by starting a conversation. So if you notice someone that you think might be struggling, make the sufficient time and create a safe space to be able to talk to them. So if you came to me as a young person and wanting to talk about kind of what's going on for you, and I'm sat here looking at the clock thinking, oh my gosh, it's lunchtime, or I have to teach in a couple of minutes, or, you know, their friends are walking past, teachers are coming in, picking up stuff, going out, you're not going to want to talk to me. You are not going to open up about what's going on. In fact, you may even think that I don't really care because I'm more bothered about the clock. So it's really important that you make sufficient time and create a safe space for these young people. And here are some conversation starters that I've put down that may be useful. So the first one that I put down is, how are you? And you may think, oh, this is really obvious. But a lot of people actually really struggle, or a lot of people really worry about what to say to someone who is struggling with their mental health. And in fact, you know, people who are struggling with their mental health are just like us. They're just normal people. In fact, it may be some of us. They're just normal people who are going through a bit of a rough time. Another thing you can say is that I've noticed you haven't been yourself lately. Is there anything you want to talk about? By saying that you've noticed that they haven't been themselves lately shows that you are looking out for them, shows that you're caring for them. And that can create a great source of comfort. And, you know, we come across so many people in life, and, you know, people constantly ask us, how are you? And you say, yeah, I'm fine. when actually you may not be fine. So ask them again, ask them how they are again, because that will make the person stop and think, actually, how am I? Am I fine? Do I want to talk about something? And here are some general do's and don'ts when talking to someone who you feel may be struggling with their mental health. Be patient. Let them talk in their own time and at their own pace. For some people, it may be the first time that they're ever opening up about their mental health struggles, and it's hard. It's hard to talk about it. It takes a lot of courage. So let them take their time. Let them be patient. Let them talk at their own pace. Show empathy. Empathy is very different from sympathy. So sympathy is when you're like, oh, you poor little thing, it must be so hard for you. No one wants that. Empathize with them, show that, okay, I understand that this must be I can sense that this has been really hard on you, but don't put them down. Actively listen. So if there's something that the person has said and you've not quite understood what they've said, don't just assume something. Ask them again. So say something like, I'm not really sure what you mean by that. Do you mind just telling me a little bit more? Or, you can even show active listening by reflecting what the person has said to you. So you can say something like, so it sounds to me like you're really struggling with your workload at the moment and you'd like a little bit of support from us, just to reflect and show that you are actually listening to what they're saying. Ask if there's anything that can be done from the education standpoint to support them. So is there anything that we can do in the classroom, in college, in uni to support you better? Acknowledge that there is more to the person than their mental health. So, for example, some of these young people they're going to be brothers, sisters, sons, daughters, musicians, artists, athletes. There's going to be so much more to the person than just their mental health. And it's also important that you know and recognize your limits. You are their educators, you are their teachers, their lecturers. There is only so much that you can do. So encourage them to seek help, encourage them to see psychiatrists, psychologists, doctors, encourage them to speak out and get that help. Some things to stay away from: avoid comparing or invalidating their experiences. So don't make them feel like there is someone who is worse off right now, or don't make them feel like there is someone perhaps in the same situation, but they're fine. Don't do that, because that's going to make someone feel really, really small, and they potentially will never open up to someone else again. Don't place blame or fault on the person, because who chooses? No one chooses to have a mental health issue. No one chooses to have a mental health disorder. Don't patronize or belittle the person. Don't pressure them to talk. So for some people, it may not be the right time for them. They may not be ready to talk, and that's okay. But it's just about reassuring them that you are there to listen to them if they do want to talk. And never, ever, ever promise confidentiality. So if you can tell the young person that you're not going to be going around telling everybody else. But if that young person discloses to you that either they or someone else is at risk of harm, or if there's something kind of illegal going on, then that's something that you have a duty of care to report. And so don't tell the young person that you're going to keep it confidential. Instead, let them know what you're going to do with that information. Inform them, keep them involved in that process. Another thing that you as educators can do is that you can help to reduce risk factors. So bullying, for example, ensure that there is appropriate disciplinary action to tackle any bullying that may arise. Academic pressure. So for example, if a young person is struggling with their workload, sit with them, help them to break it down into smaller, more manageable chunks. And suddenly it will become something that is so achievable to that young person. Financial pressure, learn about, teach yourselves, educate yourselves on, if there are any grants or funds that are in place that can be used to support students in their education. If families are wanting young people to pursue work instead of education, but the young person really wants to be in education, then, invite families in, talk with them, discuss about, the benefits of that young person pursuing education. And as educators, we place a lot of emphasis on studying and making sure that we get good academic outcomes, which is great. And it's right to do so. But it's also very, very, very important to encourage self-care. So, there's no point in a young person working and working and working and working to the point where they absolutely burn out. It is important for them to also look after their mental health and well-being alongside that. So encourage them to take time out for themselves and to engage in some of these coping mechanisms, healthy coping mechanisms. So these are just some examples of healthy coping mechanisms. So just talking to someone, talking to friends, family, listening to music, reading, painting, exercise to a healthy degree, spending time with loved ones, whatever they get enjoyment from, whatever they really, enjoy doing, that is going to be healthy for them, that's going to be good for them, that's going to make them feel good. I know I put gratitude journal at the bottom. I've known people to, write 3 things in a journal that happened that day that they're really grateful for, or that made them happy. I even know people to have written like a list of things that they like about themselves, which may sound a little kind of self-centered to some of you, but actually it's something that really helps self-esteem. And if you're finding it difficult to, think of things that you like about yourself, ask others around you, ask family, ask friends, because often we can be a lot harder on ourselves than others are. So, and others see things in ourselves that we don't. So asking other people can be really helpful. Another thing that I've put on here is mindfulness. So mindfulness is a state of being, and it's a state of being in the present moment in time. So when we're worried, when we're stressed, we are frequently thinking of things that are either about to happen or things that have happened. And mindfulness can really help to kind of center us. And grounding is a very, very simple, very easy technique that you can use to bring yourself into that center moment. So this is something that you can share with your young people. They can do it anywhere that they are. They can do it in the classroom, on the bus, at home, anywhere. And it's called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it's based on the 5 senses. So it's about thinking in your mind, thinking of just 5 things you can see, 4 things that you can feel touching yourself and your body, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. Now, this by no means completely gets rid of anxiety or stress, but it helps to calm you down in that moment in time. Tackling stigma. Tackling stigma is something that you can do as educators as well. Teach young people about mental health. We teach young people all the time about physical health. And as we've established earlier, our mental health is just as important as our physical health. In fact, as I said, there would be no good physical health without mental health. So start teaching about mental health. Be a role model for the young people. Check in on their well-being. I've known, I was reading somewhere that some teachers, when they're taking the attendance or when they're taking the register, what they do is that they call the young person's name out, and then the young person will say here or present, but then the young person will also give them a number on a scale of 0 to 10 to kind of indicate how happy or how good they're feeling that day. And so it's really, it really shows that you're wanting to check in on them and see how they're doing. And once you get that number from the young person, it's about following that up. So if you notice someone who is a 5 or below, it's about checking in on them, saying, okay, I noticed that you weren't feeling too great today. Is there anything you want to talk about? And raise awareness. So World Mental Health Day is coming up on Saturday, the 10th of October. And I challenge you to do something to raise awareness about mental health. And it's most important to keep talking. So what? You had that lecture. You did something for World Mental Health Day. That's great. But it's so important to keep talking, because only through talking can we reduce the stigma and make it normal. It's also incredibly important to look after yourselves, because if you aren't able to look after yourself, you're not going to be able to look after and support other people. So don't be discouraged if a young person is not ready to talk about their issues that they are struggling with. Make sure that you take time for you in engaging in some of those coping mechanisms. and be kind to your mind. So often we're a lot harder on ourselves than we are to other people. So ask yourself, would I say that to my friend or to a parent? And the answer is probably no. So we're just coming up to the end of the webinar now. And if there's anything that you've picked up from this session, I hope it's these things: that we all have mental health and that we need to look after it as much as we do our physical health. One thing that it's important to recognize is that our mental health can fall on a spectrum, and we can fluctuate at any point in life between a healthy state and being unwell. People can recover from mental health issues and will recover at their own pace. Educators absolutely can do something to support young people with mental health issues. Don't be afraid to start a conversation, and most importantly, keep talking. So thank you for listening to me talk today. If you have been impacted by anything that was mentioned in today's webinar, or if you are struggling with anything, I've put a link here to the Live, Love, Laugh Foundation, and they have a web page of useful helplines that you can get in touch with, and I believe they also have a web page to help you find therapists as well. So do have that at the back of your mind if you need it. And I'm happy to, answer anything that I'm unable to answer today via LinkedIn. So I've got my LinkedIn profile here. You can just scan the QR code and it will take you to my page. Brilliant. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen now. And I don't know if there's any questions.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Shall I ask the questions?
Yeah, of course.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am Vidya, she has posted a question like, does crying reduce anxiety?
Okay. So this is a very good question, and I like this question because this is something when I've worked with students, I've encouraged so much, because I've said crying is a healthy way of coping with it. Get it out, let it out. And a lot of people feel a bit ashamed to cry. A lot of people feel like they shouldn't cry, and particularly boys. I think there is a lot of stigma around males crying, but it's normal to cry. It's healthy to cry. And if crying makes you feel better, then why not? It's a healthy way of coping. So just let it out. And absolutely, I would encourage that if it's going to make you feel better.
Thank you, ma'am. Another one question by Dr. Rajini wants to know, is high unmanageable temper, is it a type of mental illness? Unmanageable temper.
Unmanageable temper, it's interesting. It could be a sign of mental health struggle, of someone struggling with a mental health issue. It doesn't always necessarily mean that someone has a mental health issue. I wouldn't want to say, conclusively yes. But it could be an indicator that someone is struggling with their mental health.
Okay. And ma'am Richa, she wants to know, is mood swings related to mental illness? Ups and downs of moods.
Yeah, okay. So it's natural and it's normal to have ups and downs in moods. We all go through ups and downs. I know I certainly do. This morning I was quite kind of high in terms of stress because I was thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to present today? But it's if those moods are kind of, if they're really persistent, if it's really impacting on your life otherwise, if it's holding you back, if it's creating issues in your social group, if it's stopping you from being able to be productive and engaging appropriately with society, then it might start to be a sign or an indicator of mental ill health.
Ma'am, another one important question related to youth. It's by Sangeeta ma'am. Do you think romantic relationship affects mental health of young adults?
Okay. Romantic relationships. So it depends on the nature of the relationship, I guess. So if it is a healthy relationship where boundaries are respected, where people are understanding of each other, then that is potentially going to make you feel good. It's going to make you feel better. But if you are already struggling with a mental health issue, if you're already feeling quite low, then, you know, pursuing a romantic relationship is not necessarily going to make you feel better. But as well as that, if the relationship is not healthy, if boundaries are not respected, if individuals are not respected in relationships, then it can lead to mental health issues, because, you know, the person could be being abused in that relationship, whether it's emotionally, psychologically, whether it's physically, maybe even sexually. So it really depends on the nature of the relationship.
Yes, ma'am, yes. True. Another one question related to youth. Teenagers have low tolerance to consequences. So how can we help them?
I think we can't generalize. I think we can't say that, you know, all youth have low tolerance to consequences. To some degree, I understand where the statement is coming from, because, you know, young people also have to learn from life and life experiences, as we all did, to be able to understand what's right, what's wrong. But sorry, could you just repeat the question again for me?
Like how to cope with them, how to make them manageable with those feelings. How can we train them? Yeah.
So it's about you know, young people learning healthier coping mechanisms. So if they are coming across kind of downs and lows in life, it's about being able to, you know, having a good social support system around them, being able to cope with those situations in a way that makes them feel good, so that they aren't kind of pursuing risky behaviors, and engaging in things that perhaps they, you know, could be dangerous or they shouldn't be.
Okay. Ma'am, another one question. Born genius, acquired genius, which is true?
What was that? Sorry.
Born genius or acquired genius, which is true?
I think this is an age-long debate of nature versus nurture that unfortunately I cannot answer, because this is a constant ongoing debate. Whether it's something that, you know, you're born with, whether it's something that you acquire, and I think that, you know, it's a combination of both.
Yes.
You know, not necessarily because parents have something does not necessarily mean that you're also going to have it. It's a combination of both that I feel would lead to something like that.
Yes. True. Another one question, important question related to youth only. Pornography is a big issue with young students. What are the indications? How can we help them? Should we inform their parents about it?
So I might be a little controversial in saying this, but, you know, it's, young people are inquisitive in life. Young people are going to want to know more. And it's something that is almost, to a degree, kind of, you know, a bit, it's, I go to the extent to saying it's something that's a bit normal, and it's something that, you know, if young people are wanting to do it, that's okay. But it's about kind of, with kind of sexual health, it's about knowing how to think about it in a like a healthy way, or how to go about it in a healthy way. And it's not something necessarily that parents should be informed about. It's something that I'd say is pretty okay, and it's pretty normal. And that's, you know, if that's what a young person wants to do, that's their kind of, that's their life. But if it's impacting in any way on their mental health, the way that they're treating others, then that's when it becomes an issue.
Okay. Ma'am, how to overcome the stress when a teacher loses his job during lockdown?
Ooh. Okay. I would say, you know, surround yourself by people who you love, and people who are going to support you, because they're inevitably the people that are going to make you feel good. You know, fill your time with things that you enjoy. Use this time. Don't think of it as, it's hard. Losing a job, I can't imagine, must be awful, especially during this time. But take the time to use this as an opportunity to do new things that you haven't done before. Take this time to learn more things about yourself, and do things that you really enjoy and make you feel good. That's going to give you that sense of self-worth and self-esteem again. So that's how I say, try and cope with that situation.
Thank you. Ma'am, whether mental health issues can be prevented through yoga and meditation?
So this is something I know that will be covered in the webinar tomorrow. So have a look at that. But what I will share with you is that from my own personal experience, that I recently started meditating, and it's something that helps me with my anxiety levels. It's not, there are so many individual differences with all of this, that one thing will work for one person, but it may not work for another. So it's about trying it out, seeing if it does work for you. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, okay, it wasn't for you. Let's try something else.
Okay. Ma'am, with regard to this COVID, in this COVID era, does overuse of technology affect the young minds?
Oh, okay. So I guess it depends. So there has been an argument, or a debate rather, about, for example, social media, and whether social media is having a negative impact on young people's mental health. And to some degree, it may be, because, for example, young people may be comparing their lives to the lives in which others are living. And if they feel that their life isn't as fulfilling, or as, as grand or as happy as other portrays theirs to be, then they may start feeling a bit low. They may start feeling a bit like, oh, why is mine not like that? But it is important to have breaks from that technology and from that source of information, because technology can be really good. It can be a source of support. We've all been reaching out with each other. I would not be talking to you here today if it wasn't for technology. So it can be both good and bad, but it's important to obviously have breaks from technology as well, and immerse yourself in other things that you enjoy.
Another question from a student. Does overthinking leads to mental illness? If yes, how to overcome from it?
Okay. So overthinking, it can be something that could lead to mental health issues. It could be even a sign of a mental health issue. I'm not saying yes, it definitely is a sign. But if you are struggling with something like overthinking, I would say, again, and I know I keep saying the same thing again and again, but it's, take time out, go and do something that you enjoy. Whether it's playing sport, whether it's listening to music, whether it's hanging out with friends, go and relax your mind, be kinder to yourself. And that's the other thing. What I mentioned towards the end of this webinar was, we're often a lot harder to ourselves than we are to other people. Think about what you'd say to a friend in that situation. So if a friend came to you and they said, oh, I'm thinking all these things, I'm overthinking, and this is going through my mind, that's going, this is going, that's going. What would you say to them in that situation? How would you help them cope with it? And then try to practice those methods yourself.
When a child is abused at home, how to make them talk about it?
This is difficult because some may not want to talk about it. It's a hard thing to talk about. Mental health itself is so hard to talk about. And if you're experiencing so much abuse and neglect or trauma at home, it can be so difficult to talk about it. But if you notice any signs of someone being abused, so if you notice any wounds or scars on a person, if you notice, particularly with children, if you do something like raise your hand and they flinch, that can be an indicator that they're being abused at home. And you might just want to start the conversation by just asking them how they are and how things are going. If you're feeling like they don't really want to open up about it, then okay, but just keep an eye on that. And if you have your suspicions, raise it. I'd say raise it with whoever, if you've got any appropriate safeguarding policies and procedures in place, follow those, and take that up with the relevant person. But just keep an eye out on that young person. And if they don't want to talk openly about it, that's okay.
One important question, ma'am, related to suicide. What's your opinion as a teachers or as students? How can they address the suicidal thoughts or self-harm thoughts or behavior? How to address these issues? It's by a teacher, ma'am.
Okay. So with regards to suicide, I know it's going to be covered in tomorrow's session by one of the speakers. So I'm sure they'll go into more detail on how to cope with suicidal ideation and how to spot signs and things. But again, it's in those early stages, it's about looking after your mental health. It's about like I said, enjoy going and doing those coping mechanisms, surrounding yourself with people you love, doing things that make you feel good, that give you a sense of self-worth, that give you a sense of purpose. So some people take up like volunteering, for example, because it makes them feel good. It gives them something to do. It fills that void a little bit. So doing different things, partaking in different coping mechanisms, going and helping others, or just doing something that makes you feel good can really help in those situations.
People with OCD always worried and bothered about their personal hygiene and cleanliness. COVID-19 pandemic may affect their mental health by thinking too much about washing hands often and spread of disease. How a person with OCD can cope with this COVID-19 pandemic situation without affecting their mental health.
Okay, it's interesting because I was watching a video actually recently about a girl who was struggling with OCD during this pandemic, and she was sharing her experiences of struggling with OCD during this pandemic. And I think what can be really reassuring for the person who is struggling is again to think about what they have around them that they are kind of grateful for, what they makes them happy, what they can surround themselves with that is going to make them feel better. And this will vary on an individual basis. So like I said, what works for one person will not work for another person. So it's about trying different things, trying new things, trying things that are going to be able to, because with OCD, you have very kind of obsessive thoughts. So something that's going to take your mind away from those obsessive thoughts. And it's just, I keep reiterating this, but it's so important to just be kind to yourself and just trust yourself, and and that can be difficult. But it's about realizing, what you have around you, being grateful for that, and just taking time to do things that are going to make you feel good, that are going to make you feel kind of more, well, to take your mind off those obsessive thoughts, really.
Okay, ma'am. Are schools and colleges contributing in a way to mental health issues by having unrealistic cutoff percentages for admissions?
I would say, I'm not going to say yes or no to that question, but I would say that unrealistic standards can definitely impact on someone's mental health, especially if they are unable to achieve those standards. They are going to feel a sense of failure and that they can't accomplish anything. That can lead to low self-esteem and definitely mental health issues. So I guess that would be my answer to that. And that, it's important to take the smaller steps to make your way to the bigger goals. And only through doing that does it seem more manageable, is it more achievable, and it fills someone with a sense of pride that they are able to do something and contributes to more positive well-being.
Ma'am, is staying up late nights on live group chats healthy, or will it lead to disorders?
So I guess in some senses, if you're on a group, it depends what you're on the group chat for, firstly. So if you feel that group chat is supportive, if it's a healthy environment in which you find kind of comfort in talking to other people about potentially mental health, then absolutely that's fine. But it also depends on the amount of sleep that you're getting. So if you're up late nights kind of on those group chats and you're waking up early mornings, you're not going to be getting very much sleep. And sleep is something that can really impact on your mental health. So it's important that you get an adequate amount of sleep. But if you're using those chats, like I said, for, as a mechanism to be able to cope with mental health issues, that's fine. But just make sure that you're also getting a good amount of sleep.
Does change of biological faculties of an individual during the teenage years cause alteration in behavior? I mean, they're asking like biological changes, does it have an impact on the behavior?
Yeah, I guess it can to a degree. It's hard to say how much. And again, it varies from individual to individual, and environmental factors will also play a role in that. So it's not only biological factors. So it could to a degree to which we are not sure of, because it will be a combination of factors, really.
Yes, another one question related to lockdown. During this lockdown, many criminal issues doing by youth, like POXO cases, are on increase. So because of this, will it lead to a danger situation and chance to increase the suicide of others? That's what they are asking, ma'am.
So, sorry, I'm not understanding. So will it increase suicide in the young people or people that they are conducting this criminal act against?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
No, which one?
Because of criminal issues, many suicides are increasing. That's what they are asking. Will it lead to another person's suicidal behavior? One person issue. Will it be affected?
Absolutely. You can never really say for sure. You can't say that because someone has had, say for example, someone has come and robbed someone's house and stolen from them. You can't say for sure that that robbery is something that has led to someone's suicide. You can't say that exactly. But traumatic events such as that can lead to mental health issues. So it can lead to depression. It could lead to PTSD. It could lead to a variety of mental health issues. But we cannot say conclusively that because someone has experienced, been a victim of a criminal activity, that they will commit suicide.
During this COVID period, children are unknowingly getting addicted to gadgets as their substitute during lockdown. Are these reversible when things become normal?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Again, I'll share a personal experience. I know my brother spends a lot of time playing on like Nintendo Wii's or whatever he does, and but when they start meeting friends again, they'll start going out and doing things, and hopefully life will get back to normal. For some, it may not be the case. It may be that they feel a lot more comfortable at home. They may start feeling a sense of anxiety now when it comes to, social relationships and going out and doing things. But again, it's about surrounding that individual with a good support system. It's about surrounding that individual with kind of coping mechanisms that's going to make them feel more at ease when they are able to go out and interact with others.
An important question. Don't you think identifying the illness and accepting it could be the first step for recovery? In which stage should one look for medical help?
Yeah, so sometimes people are in denial that they have a mental health issue. And if they are in denial, it can be very, very difficult to work with them because they think there's nothing wrong, there's nothing happening. And absolutely, I believe that saying that actually I need help with this, I think there may be something wrong, is the first step. And I think that's the most important step, and possibly even the hardest step for a lot of people, to be able to stand up and say, okay, yeah, I need help. At which point medical intervention would be necessary is kind of dependent and varied on the individual. I would say it's always better safe than sorry. So seek medical intervention if you are able to as soon as you can, and take, advice from your doctor or a psychiatrist, whatever they say. So as I said, it's better to be safe than sorry. Just seek it earlier, because with early intervention, there is greater success and greater chance for recovery. As early as you can, really.
Ma'am, can you explain about social phobia?
Social phobia, so social anxiety. So people struggle with social anxiety. They get really anxious, really nervous about what people may be thinking about them. They feel people may be judging them. They feel people maybe, don't really want to be around them, but are forced to be around them. And thinking really horrible things that really impact on themselves, essentially. And I have supported and I have worked with students who struggle with social anxiety. And it's about, like I said, taking those small steps and saying, okay, let's try something. Let's see how it goes. And understanding, what you think about the situation. So if someone came and said hi to you, if someone you didn't know came and said hi to you, how would you feel? Would you feel like, oh, what are you doing? Or would you feel like, oh, that was nice? And frequently it's about challenging those thoughts and being like, but why? Why would it happen? Is there any evidence for this thought? Trying to challenge that, and allowing them to take those small steps to be able to interact with their groups of peers.
Another one question related to child's mental health. In front of parents, children cannot say or act those things which they do in front of their friends during lockdown. So some of them get arrogant or they just keep quiet. So how do we keep their mental health stable?
So this is, so young people are more comfortable talking about these types of issues with their friends than they are with adults sometimes. And, if by having kind of like mentors or guides in schools can really help that situation. But from an education standpoint, to keep a young person's mental health kind of good and stable is following some of the stuff that I spoke about potentially earlier on, and plus any additional ideas that you might have as well. So it's about, making sure that risk factors for developing mental health issues are reduced. It's about talking to them, checking in on their well-being frequently, knowing that there is someone there to listen to them can be just so comforting. And just being there for the person.
Do you think people use mental health issues as a crutch to manipulate people into getting things in their own way?
I hope not. Because, if someone feels, so this is my take on it, if someone feels like they are struggling with a mental health issue, if it's something that is impacting them and they believe that, then I go on the premise that, it's something that they're really experiencing and it's something that we should address. And even if some people may feel like it's a cry for help, that people are just saying this, but if even if it were a cry for help, it should still be something that is addressed, because they're obviously crying for a reason. So I hope that people are not abusing mental health, or because there are a lot of people out there who struggle with that, who aren't able to speak out or feel like they aren't able to speak out. And it would be wrong to kind of say that you do have a mental health issue to try and do things or get away with things that you don't. And that would just not be okay.
Thank you, ma'am. One last question, ma'am. How to develop emotional intelligence among youth? Emotional intelligence among youth.
It's through interacting with peers, I guess, and some instances as well. It's in like families, families who openly talk about feelings. Some families don't talk about how they're feeling. Like if something has upset you, let them know. So this can be, by sharing your feelings, you can really start to gain a sense of emotional intelligence, of how certain behaviors have impacted on other people, how how other people might be feeling in different situations and scenarios. So it's being more open about how we are feeling in those moments and times that can really contribute to the development of emotional intelligence.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Thanks a lot for your wonderful presentation. It was to the point, everything. Your PowerPoint was very simple, and it was to the what the youth needed. That's what I could observe. And you have covered the important issue of stigma, which is a biggest hurdle for mental health. That you have nicely pointed out, ma'am. And the mindfulness was something very interesting and very novel technique, which I found, because as a psychologist, I have read many mindful techniques, but this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 was very simple, and it was very useful, and it will be used by our youth among Pondicherry and India, ma'am. And as you have mentioned, let's keep talking, and we will also keep talking and talking in future about the mental health issues, ma'am. Thank you. Thanks a lot for your time. You have spent a great time with us, and the session was so interactive. Many have given a feedback, positive feedback, and they have gained the knowledge, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
And for the participants, delegates, please join us in the afternoon session. And once the afternoon session ends, we will post the questions for you and the feedback form. Thank you. Meet you in the afternoon. Thank you.